Here, optimism is at its maximal expansion, and the sign is convinced and sometimes deluded that the uterus it will provide endless resources, and thus the fetus dilates to this Jupiter first domicile. The uterus, to its maximal point, fed by the mother's milk, this moon transparency that fuels it, immersed and contained within the infinite primordial soup of the amniotic liquid. In this sign, Neptune Jupiter opposes the street smarts of Mercury Epsilon in Gemini. So this is a sign that trusts people. You know, this is the loop of the news Gemini, this Epsilon Mercury that gets consumed, recollected into the non plus ultra of philosophy, Sagittarius. All philosophy is the total greater than the sum of its parts. And all philosophy has the aspiration to resolve all previous problems, and it's definitive in nature. Truth is, it is necessary specific sequences of in the nows and of news in order to achieve and absorb knowledge. Ergo, axioms cannot formulate themselves before their designated time. Think of all the great scientists that were mocked before because they were born before their times. Jupiter is the world, sound becomes word. It gets meaning associated with it, and the meaning sticks with it. Word, world, anyone. And this drops the immediateness of Gemini and slows down massively any form of communication. This is Sagittarius speech. So we are trading time now for space dilation in your mind. Gemini, the teen, responds to the sea of words via slang, and the highest, loudest volume of sound, which is sound as a shield against the fitness and preaching nature of words, and removing meaning from words, rap/pop against the words of the Father. Thus, through written or not word, epsilon data, which must be extended to anyone willing or not to listen beyond individual experience, it must reach everywhere and anyone. Doctrine is the body, the corpus of thought, and also the ring past not. So I have this metaphor that's gonna make you make sense of this in literal terms. So the Americas were colonies, and the Americas are, like all colonies, strongly influenced by Sagittarius. The Americas are the sum civilizational development, within all which all human development was accelerated because we are consuming Mercury here. So everything is faster. We want to get to the end the fastest way possible. So, you know, in America, I'm gonna take USA because it's easier. We got survival pioneers into ranches, agriculture, plantation, slavery, industrialization, etc. They did this in rapid record terms of just 300 years. And all very fast of this, they even managed to resume the ancient and corrupted practice of slavery for like half a century or so, basically. And I don't mean just having them, I mean the institution of it. The vastless, endless expanses of resources, you know, they don't count their water, they don't count their resources. You can always count in some resource crisis of sorts to end by discovering a massive resource depot in Bumfuck, Montana, you know. They also rely on the deep religious fanaticism and optimism of the signs. They are trying to reach civilization as fast as possible to catch up with everyone else so they can be the sum total of greater than its parts and put a ring past naught of what civilization is, worth or not. Now we go to biblical section. First we have Elisha, and second we have Jonah, and its famous story of the well, of course. So, after the battle to the death of the previous cycle, Elijah retires up in the sky and passes down the mantle of prophecy down to Elisha, which was a wealthy farmer. This is a sign of great abundance. Earth exalted. He finishes up Elias' job. He purchased the last descendants of King Ahab, and he makes his life mission to render Elias' mutation, Elias' doctrine, into a coherent, institutionalized form of teaching. So he basically founds numerous schools. Also, Elijah multiplies bread, which is this Jupiter theme of multiplication we will find also in Jesus when we do Pisces. Instead of cold iron or survivalism, he uses my favorite Jupitarian signification, which is mercy. He uses mercy on the enemies of Israel. So instead of killing many enemies, he shows them mercy to deter them, to show that he has enough power that he can spare them, or even to convince them of the validity of his authority, which is another aspect. This authority via mercy we will see in Jesus in the later videos. Another aspect of this legacy, going back to the signification of writing, is the writer prophets themselves. After him, there's a series of prophets that are writers, which turned prophecy, the art of prophecy, into written form to make it preserve. Then we enter the final aspect of signification, which is international and geopolitical power. His teaching schools became more influential and legitimate enough to influence even pagan states and start coups in them. He shows the interconnectedness of all nations. He prophesies the destiny of Syria and other states, turning a local, confined, mutated, because it mutated with Elijah, religion into international authority. In between the expansion and growth of power and spiritual authority in the kingdom of Judah, we have this power that they had for a while. But then we go to the end of it, the end of Sax. So what happens when we actually done all this thing? What's the result? We have Jonah and the whale. So Jonah was a rich, realized authority, was considered authority, wealthy prophet, after predicted a victory, one of the many victories of Israel on its enemies. But then we enter the core struggle of this sign, which is, why should we show mercy to our enemies when they want to kill us? And his story goes as such. So God orders him to go to Nineveh, which was the capital of Assyria, which is basically the Nazi empire of the old world, of the Bronze Age. Here, Neptune ideology picks up, this big Neptune here. He does not want to go there because he's a nationalist. He believes in the glory and he wants to protect the kingdom of Israel, does not want his nation destroyed. Most famous part of his story takes place. He goes to the port in Jaffa, which is on the coast of Lebanon. He descends to the sea, the deep Neptune Mediterranean Sea, and under its influence, he doubts his ideology. He accepts to drown underwater to save pagan sailors. So he enters the whale. He realizes that deciding who to dispense mercy to is not his job, but God's job. So we have Neptunian submission to unidentifiable forces, which is basically just trusting God's plan. Inside the whale, he experiences this Neptunian paradise. It's a tomb, a temple, and a womb all at once. And he's reborn, because, much like Jesus, 3 days later he comes out. He's vomited out as a universal apostle. He submits to the destiny of being an international prophet, even if he hates how big God mercy actually is. It does not actually like. History section! After the death cults of the Aztecs and the silicon facades, or marble facades of the Italian Renaissance, we enter an era of exploration and religious fanaticism. This is the era of the Spanish Inquisition, Counter-Reform, as well as Protestantism itself, started by a Scorpio, which is Martin Luther. Martin Luther is a Scorpio mutation, and he challenges Catholicism, and Catholicism pushes its own capacity to believe itself, reaches its peak. This is the peak of Catholic power all through all of history. We have an artillery revolution. In this era, military power, it's about mass. It's about the tercio, a massive blocky formation of pikes and muskets that move as this giant, unstoppable organism. So we measure power through the quantity of firepower. So Pluto, firepower that came from China, gunpowder itself during the Scorpio era. And Mercury itself here reminds us of the inaccuracy of such gods. It is the belief of this era that a little fire is good, but a massive, thunderous storm is divinely just. You can also tell that to Americans. Their whole doctrine is firepower. They also do that. They can dump any amount of ammunition, and it's God-given. Now we're no longer talking about city-states. We're talking about the Spanish and Portuguese empires, which are truly multicultural megastructures. This is the Neptune Jupiter synthesis. This is the non plus ultra. This is the global empire. They didn't just conquer, they dissolved borders. They created a world in which a piece of silver could be minted in Mexico and could be sold in China to buy silk and spice. And then on the other side of the center, we have the Ottomans. The Ottomans didn't just conquer, they absorbed. They took the mud of the fragmented tribes of the Turks, mutation that came, that migrated, that was exiled from their native land during the Scorpio era, and created a Dev-Shirme system, which is the most Sagittarian system ever. They took the other as in other religions, so basically Christians, and institutionalized them into Janissaries, which are the elite corps of the Ottoman Empire. And it was mercy as a power move. The Ottomans used the millet system. They allowed different religions to exist within their borders as long as they paid their due tax. The multiculturalism, this was the era in which the Ottoman Empire was basically where you wanted to live. You had the most freedoms, the most funding for your knowledge until the 700s. But yeah, this is the double portion of Rome, reborn in the East. With the Spanish, Austrian Empire embarked on total war on 3 fronts. We have a war with Gemini. So we have Dutch, Brits. They demonstrated mastery over the land. Brits march, Brits mass. English on the sea. So they had those Geminis that were very annoying. Mercantile and religiously tolerant. The Dutch and the Brits. For the Ottomans, which is another all-encompassing empire of a different faith and culture with the same ambition of absorbing the whole world, basically. So, they almost took Vienna, they almost pushed Islam into Europe. And with the middleman of the previous eras, France. So, they fought France as well. Which is a country that was stuck in the middle to prove its own religiosity as a Catholic country and the central authority of the king, which did not really care that much about being Catholic or not, So you have myths. Also, Protestantism massively spread over France in that period. But all religious fanaticism will be put to a test near its end, which is the War of the 30 Years. In this period, this is a period of dense massacres, especially in an area so forgotten. The Prussian lands, those marches, those poor marshes, poor and weak, which took the harshest beating, and out of this abuse, the survivors which were amidst of basically mercenaries. There was a lot of mercenaries roaming around the era. And whoever survived had the strongest fucking hull system, the strongest resilience of anyone. Out of this abuse, the Prussian discipline, an army with a stay will emerge, and is going to be the next protagonist in our great astrological story. We're going to get to Capricorn, so stay tuned for that next video. Now we go to significations. We're going to have forests, the massive jungles, even more of the Americas, the Amazon. Which you can also see, think of the Amazon, it's a female, female wild warrior. It's feminine, of course, You can also think of the Amazon as Amazon the company, which was founded at the beginning of Pluto's SAG, and that's gonna take its test during Pluto's Capricorn. Indiscriminate and voracious eating. Kirby, I'm a big fan of Kirby. Character that devours everything. The idea that you absorb any power by eating and phagocytating everything. This was the boom of energy drinks, the late 90s, early 2000s. The body significations are the knee, the thigh, the leg, that part, and if we talk in Shakira, hips don't lie, this is the era of everybody shaking their hips, which recalls the uterine significations of having a fertile uterus. So you have the bicycles. Cycling was all the rage in the mid-90s. Philosophy, traveling, all the signification correlated to traveling. I'm not going to list globalization, multiculturalism, internet became a library in this era. The Americas, USA in spirit. Some of the media, they recall SAG, Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings had the purpose to liquidate the scorpionic desire of infinite power and mutation of the ring of power. We have to liquidate the corruption. Harry Potter, which is basically a university, which is one of the Sagittarian signification as well. It's there. The 2000s, it's all about making it look like university. Matrix trilogy. This is very important. This is something I really find amazing. So, the 90s, 80s have the New Age, which is filled with a lot of bullshit. And the 2000s basically take that, whatever survive, whatever is not bullshit, and puts it into its maximal expansion. That's what I'm trying to do myself. I want to take astrology, put it to its maximum potential. If that teaches us that we live in a simulation, okay, let's learn to live it. Let's learn prophecy. Let's live by prophecy, All this is prophecy. And this is the recollection of the mercurial data, This is SAG radio you're listening to. This Pluto's SAG radio. Sagittarius convinced us the resources are infinite. But what happens when the arrow hits the rock? In the next video, we will see how this odd abundance gets converted into cold, hard rock structure. And, we've seen how Sagittarius ends. We've seen how Sagittarius uses mercy as a power move. So, is it true compassion? Or is it just another form of colonial dominance over the mind?